Welcome to this explainer. If you've been eyeing the booming real estate market in Sri Lanka, you already know that navigating the legal framework there requires absolute precision. So today we're going to demystify those complex rules and walk through the step-by-step logistics of safely buying and registering property as a foreign investor.
Let's start with the literal million-dollar question on every international buyer's mind. Can you actually, legally own a piece of this beautiful island? The answer is a bit of a maze, but it's entirely navigable once you know the right paths.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Foreign ownership legal limits. 2. Ownership verification document checklist. 3. Title versus deed systems. 4. The notary and execution. And 5. The step-by-step registration process.
Section 1. Foreign ownership legal limits, navigating the restrictions on Alienation Act.
First things first, we have to establish the basic rules of the game. Since 2013, direct freehold land ownership is strictly a no-go for non-citizens. You simply can't buy a plot of land in your own name. But there are distinct legal exceptions. You can legally secure property through high-rise condominiums, specifically by buying apartments on or above the fourth floor. You can also enter into long-term leasehold agreements for up to 99 years. And naturally, if you hold dual citizenship, you're entirely exempt from these foreign ownership restrictions and can buy land just like a resident citizen.
Now this brings us to a corporate workaround that a ton of international investors utilize. You actually can purchase freehold land through a registered Sri Lankan private limited company. However, the law mandates a very strict limit. A local Sri Lankan individual or entity must hold at least 51% of the company's shares. As a foreign investor, your shareholding is legally capped at a maximum of 49%. You really have to get this right, because if your foreign ownership hits 50% or more, the land transfer becomes legally void. It just doesn't count.
Section 2. Ownership Verification Document Checklist. Essential due diligence before you buy.
Okay, so you know how you qualify to buy. Now let's talk about the exact documents you need to dig into before signing literally anything. Hand this precise checklist to your lawyer. You'll need the original title deed and a certified survey plan approved by the local authority. But the real heavy lifting? That lies in verifying the 30-year extracts, locally known as Paththu, which trace the entire historical chain of ownership. You also absolutely have to get a non-vesting certificate, or NVC. This confirms the government isn't secretly planning to acquire the land for a public project. Round all that out with street and building line certificates, plus a local tax clearance certificate, and you've got a rock-solid foundation for your purchase.
Section 3. Title versus deed systems. Understanding Sri Lanka's dual property registration.
This brings us to what is arguably the most crucial educational moment for any foreign investor. Sri Lanka actually operates on two entirely different property registration systems. On the one hand, we have the modern title registration system, called BIM-Savia. Under this system, the government issues a certificate of title that guarantees your absolute ownership and exact boundaries. It's conclusive legal evidence. On the other hand, we have the traditional deed registration system. This system just records the documents themselves. The government isn't guaranteeing your ownership here. Instead, your security relies completely on your lawyer's ability to prove an unbroken, clean, 30-year historical chain of custody.
So the big takeaway here is understanding the sheer value of a first-class title. Acquiring land registered under the BIM-Savia system with a first-class title gives you bulletproof, state-backed security. You don't have to stress about some long-lost relative popping out of the woodwork with an ancient deed to claim your land because the state has finalized the title. If you're buying under the traditional deed system instead, your due diligence needs to be drastically more rigorous to mitigate all those historical risks.
Section 4. The notary and execution. The legal anchor of your purchase.
Once you've verified the title and the paperwork, we reach the execution phase. And look, in Sri Lanka, you can't just shake hands on a land deal or scribble up a private contract. The Prevention of Frauds Ordinance is the foundational law here, and it legally anchors your entire transaction. It strictly mandates that any transfer of a movable property must be in a formal written document processed through a very specific legal channel.
And that specific channel is the notary public. The entire legal weight of your property transfer rests squarely on their shoulders. By law, the notary public must meticulously prepare your deed of transfer and then formally attest it. But here is the absolute kicker. The notary has to ensure that the buyer, the seller, and two independent witnesses are all physically present together, signing the document in each other's presence. If that strict formal protocol gets messed up, your deed could be deemed legally invalid. No exceptions. Section 5. The step-by-step registration process. The final mile at the land registry.
All right, let's walk through the actual mechanics of registering those newly executed documents. Following this chronological sequence is vital. Step 1. Before executing the final deed, you have to pay your stamp duty. That's generally 3% on the first 100,000 Sri Lankan rupees and 4% on the remaining balance. Step 2. You formally execute the deed of transfer with your notary. Step 3. You immediately submit those documents to the relevant district land registry. And finally, Step 4. Don't forget to update your ownership details with the local municipal council so you can actually transfer utility bills and tax records into your name.
Crucially, you actually have options for how fast this paperwork moves. The land registry offers 2 distinct pathways. The normal service handles general real estate paperwork at a standard, somewhat slower pace. But for the big stuff, like your deed of transfer, a deed of lease, or a mortgage bond, you're eligible for the expedited service. We highly recommend utilizing this fast-tracked option to secure your priority in the registry as quickly and efficiently as possible. To make sure everything goes off without a hitch, please keep these practical logistics in mind. Land registries only operate on weekdays from 8:30 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. But listen to this. If you have fees to pay on site, the cash counters close at 3 p.m. sharp. Missing that cutoff will delay your registration by a full day. Also, while you can submit documents in person or via post, you absolutely must submit them to the specific regional registry that has jurisdiction over your land's district. Sending it to the wrong office will completely stall the whole process.
Ultimately, as a foreign investor looking at property in Sri Lanka, you have to ask yourself, have you followed this legal roadmap thoroughly? Because in this market, peace of mind isn't built on a handshake. It's built entirely on rigorous legal preparation, fully understanding the 5149 limits of corporate structures, picking the safest title system, and executing that step-by-step registration flawlessly. Do your due diligence, verify every single document, and your island investment can truly be secure.